What's up, everybody? I'm Molly Wenzel, and this is the Good Girl Revolt podcast. So I decided, and Shug's probably going to get up and leave. Sometimes I talk too loud for her. So who knows? But yeah, so this is episode number 2, and I just have been deciding to just go for it. I did audio only for the first one because I didn't really have a setup. When you see clips of podcasts, people have those big headphones and desks and those chairs and plants. And I was like, I can't do a podcast. I don't have any of that. And I kind of just decided this is me, and this is my cat. And let me know if you have any feedback or anything you want to see or talk about or anything at all. And I will do my best to deliver. But in the first episode, I kind of just talked about who I was, some of the things I've gone through, and how the book and the Good Girl Revolt itself came to be. And okay, bye, Shug. Yeah, she doesn't like that. She's a very private lady, so she doesn't like being involved. But anyway, so the first episode was kind of more personal and just about me. And in this one, I would love to talk more about what a good girl is, because especially on TikTok, there's some confusion at times of what kind of good girl I'm talking about. Although sometimes kinks can come from trauma, not all of them. And that's just a very generalized statement, but sometimes the two do overlap. So just saying. But anyway, so in my opinion, a good girl is someone who has been conditioned to be just that, a good girl, somebody who is praised by all of the adults around her. So parents, teachers, people at church, people in the community. You're always kind of described as a delight to have around, or a model student. And good girls are little girls who have been conditioned to take care of people around them. So, over time, you learn that your boundaries will not be respected, and it causes a lot of fights and a lot of chaos when you try to set boundaries. So you learn just not to have them at all. You learn that there's some unsafe and emotionally volatile people around you, and you notice your impact on them. Even very, I'm talking 5-6 years old, you are noticing that your presence and your calm makes people feel better. When you're sweet, or when you do a little dance, or when you do something funny to lighten the mood, you start noticing that when you are quote unquote good, that's when you get attention. That's when you get nurturing in any form. And good girls are really just conditioned out of a sense of self, so no boundaries, you are just not allowed to exist as you are. You are taught that you exist for the convenience and for the service of others. And for most of your life, if you're someone who has been conditioned as a good girl or a people pleaser, you often take great pride in that, because again, that's where your positive attention comes from. Excuse me, I don't know what the fuck that was. Let me get my sweet tea from Cookout. If you know, you know. Right, so that's when you actually get noticed, when you're an A+ student, or when you're a little know-it-all or a little tattletale, that's the only time you get attention. And otherwise, you were probably ignored. Children should be seen, not heard, locked outside for hours, stuff like that. So being a good girl is something that, for me, I believe is a trauma response. Some other people, there are some people in my TikTok comments that argue for those limitations and that way of being. And I used to try to fight with those people. And now I'm just okay, if that's your reality, you go for it. Right. Good girls are often also forced to be kind of manipulative, and not in the same way that they are dysfunctional, but not in the same way that a narcissist is manipulative or a liar is manipulative. They are more taught if I don't have needs, then people will stay. And if I'm a giver, then they'll know that I have value and want to be my friend. That is manipulation, but it's not the same as malicious manipulation. Do you know what I mean? because people get real caught up in these labels and these words, and I just want you to understand that like being a good girl or a people pleaser is a trauma response. So even though yes, those are manipulative behaviors, you are not like a narcissist. You know what I mean? You have just been taught that's the only way to get your needs met, right? Like if you did not learn to adapt like and to be a giver, you would never get any of your needs met, and like that's death to a child, literal or figuratively. You know what I mean? So don't get caught up in these like different labels. And sometimes people use that kind of word like against people like us, you know, of like, oh, well, you're manipulative too. And it's like, yeah, no shit, dude, but it's not the same. You know, one is a trauma response to get your needs met, and one is honestly probably a trauma response as well, but like one where you're taking advantage of people, you know? Anyway, I'm gonna go on tangents. That's the other thing. That's why I'm like, I don't really want to like sit at a desk or be all like professional, because I'm just not that person. I'm more of like, let's just see where this fucking goes. You know what I mean? But anyway, so tangents. Good girls spend their lives caretaking others, not only because that's the only role that they've ever been allowed to have, but also because that's, you know, the only way that they feel secure. You know, there's a benefit, a hidden benefit to every unhealthy behavior, or else you wouldn't be able to put up with the like negative side effects of that unhealthy behavior. There has to be some kind of benefit. And with being a good girl, the hidden benefit of it is that you get to just like kind of kick back and let other people take the lead. Right? Because since you've been conditioned since childhood, most likely, like 98% of the time, that's a fake statistic, don't fucking come for me. So since you've been conditioned to be this way, and you've been conditioned out of having a sense of self, then when you are in adulthood, you don't really know who you are. You don't like making decisions can be very stressful because you might not know what your preference is or what your needs are. Or if you're with other people, the weight of the responsibility of if they like your choice or not is just too much sometimes. You know what I mean? So the hidden benefit of being a people pleaser is that you get to skirt around that responsibility. So if you let selfish people into your life, people who like suck all the air out of the room and are always making the decisions, you might feel resentful and you might feel disconnected from them or unseen as a human. But the benefit of that is you don't have to make those choices. That person is just going to automatically do what they want to do because you always let them, or because they're just that selfish, or most likely a combination of the two. And therefore, whatever happens is on that person. So the hidden benefit of that is that you skirt out of responsibility. And so you get to blame other people for being selfish. You get to like look around your life and be like, I'm so unhappy, but it's not my fault. It's this person's fault. It's that person's fault. That person did this to me, right? And so again, that's not a very empowered way to be, but it's sometimes a lot easier than having to learn how to have a sense of self. Right? And so people pleasing is a trauma response, just like many other things. So there's pros to it and there's cons to it. There's reasons why adults keep doing it and reasons why they choose not to heal, you know? So I just want you to understand that this is like this is not just like I just don't want to be responsible, so I don't like making decisions. Like, it's a very complex thing to be conditioned out of your boundaries and out of your like inner knowing and your voice and your boundaries. Like, it's a very confusing place when that's how you grow up. And especially like in childhood, like being conditioned as a good girl means you most likely came from a dysfunctional family, because healthy families teach you how to regulate your emotions, how to repair when you've hurt somebody's feelings or when somebody's hurt yours. You know, healthy families allow you the space to be who you are without ridicule, without shame, without humiliation, you know. And in dysfunctional families, it's the complete opposite. Everything's ridiculed and everything's shamed, and everybody has to stay in line, and usually skirting around one or two very like explosive people. So not everybody in the family is dysfunctional or abusive, but if nobody ever confronts that person or just keeps enabling that person, like you're kind of all in on it. Growing up as a good girl is a very confusing time because you're told one thing, but then you witness others. So you are often like every kid, well, not every kid, but like kids are often taught like tell the truth and you have nothing to worry about. You don't have to be scared of authority. Or, like you can come to me as a parent or an aunt or an uncle. Like I'm a safe place for you. If you need help, just give me a call and I'll help you out. When in reality, when you let somebody know that you're struggling or that you made a mistake, like in a dysfunctional family, oftentimes that you're yelled at and then you're punished. And then, you become this punching bag for an adult who had a bad day. Or then your mistake or your failure of whatever kind is used as family gossip. And now everybody in the family, every time you see them, like brings up this mistake you made as like a family joke. You know what I mean? So like when you grow up as a good girl, it's like you don't really have a safe place to go. Because your family is supposed to be your number one support and your number one like nurturer and protector. And if you're from a dysfunctional family like a lot of us are, you never experience that. And so the world is a confusing place because authority is telling you one thing but living another and punishing you for doing something when they, are allowed to get away with it. For me, I never witnessed like healthy connections. I never really witnessed healthy separation. It's like you kind of pick a person and stay with them unless something really fucking extreme happens. And even then, sometimes you just stick it out. I was never shown repair. My God, I don't, at this moment, I cannot come up with any examples of when the adults around me like apologized for their behavior or their mistakes or like even like between them, not even if it wasn't like them versus like a kid. I really didn't see the adults repairing. I saw a lot of like arguments, usually on the phone, never really in person, or like just talking and then that phone call ending, another one immediately starting with somebody different and like the very opposite like words are coming out of that person's mouth. You know what I mean? So it's like I saw that like people aren't safe. Like, so I always thought my trust issues kind of started when I was assaulted or with, all of this like not recent, but the stuff in like 2020 with my, ex-relationship and those old friends. I thought like that was kind of the origin of my trust issues. But looking back, like I never had anybody to trust. Like I was always feeling like I was on my own as a kid and like in middle school and in high school. So I never really ever felt what it was like to have a safe place that wasn't going to be like used against me later or like, thrown in your, like accepting help from people always came with strings. Like I learned that very early that like accepting help came with strings, whether that was like using that to manipulate you into something that you didn't want to do or you already said no to, or using it like as a way to be like, well, I gave you this, so now you have to come over and do this for me. Like very blatantly too, not even subtle, like very blatantly, using things against you. Like Christmas presents, like money and stuff was definitely like, well, you have to, spend time with me or you have to do X, Y, or Z, or if you behave this way, you won't get it, So like I learned that help and gifts and money always come with strings and are always used against you. So like good girl conditioning is not even just, not being allowed to have boundaries, not being allowed to have a voice and always being like the caretaker of those around you. It's also just like you being completely on your own as a little kid. And not even just on your own, you are then parentified because as a people pleaser, you see how your presence, and I'm saying you, but honestly, I'm speaking about my experience. And like, if this resonates with you, wonderful. And if not, just know that I'm saying you, but I'm meaning me. Just wanted to clarify that real quick. But like, so let me try and switch that. I'll try and be cognizant. But like, I noticed that like my presence like really had an impact on people. When I was a little kid, I was very like, when I do inner child healing and when I think about like memories from my childhood, I see myself as like truly like this little light. And I knew very young my impact on people, but I didn't understand it. And I was very connected with natures, and I had a lot of weird spiritual experiences. But of course, like, if your family's not even talking about emotions and needs and boundaries, like, of course you're not fucking talking about spirits and dead people and shit. Like, of course not. Like, no. So that was not even a thing. I didn't realize that all of that was spiritual stuff. I kind of just thought I was always a little batshit crazy. But anyway, so I kind of always just had this knowing my impact on people. And so I would see people around me being upset or in emotional situations or in like crisis or something. And like, I could feel their emotions as well. I know a lot of you will resonate with that, where like from a very young age, you could feel people's sadness or depression or anger or just like distress. And like, when you're a kid, you don't have the option of leaving that situation. You are forced to kind of stay there and do your best to make it as safe as possible for yourself. Oh my God, of course, Sugar is gonna use the litter box right now. This is fucking hilarious. I have no idea if you're gonna be able to hear it or not, but fuck it. If you can, I'm probably just gonna leave it in. I love it. This is a great podcast. What was I talking about, Sugar? I don't remember. Spiritual stuff. Oh, yes. Being very young. Oh, being empathic and feeling their emotions. You know, so that's another reason people become people pleasers. It's not always trauma. You know, some people in my comments on TikTok were like, my parents were great and I had a very wonderful family and I have no, you know, traumatic things that I can think of, which, side note, I also used to say that. So side note, if that's you and like you truly do have a healthy family, like God bless you, that's wonderful. But also maybe just learn a little bit more about trauma or, you know, trauma responses before saying like, oh no, I have no trauma. Just side note. But anyway, back to the main point. Some people do have healthy families, which is insane to me. I mean, that's just like a foreign concept, but kudos to you. But they were also saying like, but I'm still a people pleaser and I still am like everything I describe as a good girl. They're like, yeah, no, that's me. But like, I don't know where it came from. Where that could have come from is that maybe you were just like this little empathic little baby who could feel people's emotions, right? And if you could feel people's emotions as strongly as I could, like, then it was almost unbearable, you know, because like when I was surrounded by, I mean, my family was full of sadness and of unresolved trauma and of just like, again, no repair. So like conflict just kind of sat and never really went anywhere. We just kind of all had to like pretend it didn't happen. So when you're surrounded by people like that, even if you have wonderful family members, you know, who are emotionally healthy, if somebody's having a bad day and you can feel that, you might feel like, I can't, you know, ask them for something now because I feel their emotion. I feel how sad they are. Or, you know, just feeling bad, taking up space or being a burden on them if you know that they're going through a hard time. So just a side note there, maybe not, you know, maybe not trauma. Maybe it could just be that you could feel people so deeply as if like you're living their emotions that it just feels unbearable to try and like put something else on their plate, you know, knowing that they feel that way. Good girl conditioning is so like such a product of the patriarchy because it's literally like, and I think things are changing now, especially this year in the year of the Barbie. Oh shit, I forget that creator's name. I'm so sorry. I can picture her face. She's hilarious. I did not coin year of the Barbie. Mad something. It's okay. Maybe I'll figure it out and tag her if I can. But anyway, in the year of the Barbie, things are definitely changing. Like so many women and feminine people are waking up to the fact that like they don't need to put up with this abuse and these shitty people in their lives. So good girl conditioning is absolutely a huge part of the patriarchy because the patriarchy and men in general absolutely benefit from women being good girls, being afraid to take up space. Yes, Sugar. This is amazing. She's blessing us with her presence. Sugar, do you have anything to say? No comment. Anyway, so yeah, being a good girl also means like, so not only having no boundaries and no sense of self, it also just means being like sweet and pleasant. And like all old men love me. They love me. They think I'm like this cute little all-American girl, like what I look like, I feel does not match who I actually am, because if they knew who I actually was, they would think I was the devil, you know? But like, so old men would absolutely love me because I would just be all like sweet and cute and like flirt with them a little bit because they love it. You know, that's what the patriarchy wants. They just want women to be cute and sweet and flirt with them and make them feel like men. And that's all they want from us. And also like full control and dominance, you know, shit like that. So a patriarchal society and men who like really tie into that and like support that, they don't want women to have voices and to have boundaries and to have friends and to have hobbies and jobs and money and security and self-confidence. They don't want any of that. So our society actively rewards women while at the same time also actively punishing them for being good girls, for being people pleasers, for being, you know, the superhero woman. They want women to be everything, because if that type of woman is next to them, then they get to claim like, that's mine, that's who I bagged. But when they bag that woman, they also then break her down behind closed doors, because how dare she be so confident? How dare she be so accomplished? How dare she not need a man for her self-worth? How dare she make him look bad because she's so amazing at everything? Do you know what I mean? So like, being a good girl is like the way that the patriarchy continues. We just allow people to do whatever they want, and we don't cause a fuss, and we keep the peace, and we don't like cause a scene by calling somebody out for their really shitty behavior, because that's very rude. You know, like everybody around me, everybody in my life is like leaving their shitty ass relationship and realizing like, wow, no matter what I do, you're still gonna be a piece of shit to me. I'm just noticing a lot of people in my real life that are waking up to like just how bad they've been treated and how low their standards have been, and how often they've been manipulated to believe that their emotions or their needs are the reason they've been abused. Lots of us are waking up to this fact. And like, I was in a relationship for almost 13 years, and I thought I was like the luckiest woman in the world because he was such a golden boy and had such a good reputation and everybody loved him and blah blah blah, and it all turned out to be very false. Very, very false. And it took me that long to realize, because I also met him when I was 19. And you know, there's that funny meme that's like, who's the worst man you've ever met in your life and why was he your boyfriend at 19? And it's just like, when you get with somebody that young, like you don't know any better. And especially, oh my God, especially if you're like a good girl and a people pleaser who has been parentified, who's been forced to take care of everybody else. That's like, so there's this like pipeline, and I think I talked about this in my first podcast episode. I do a lot of videos, a lot just to like process myself. So sometimes I don't remember if I said something and posted it or if I said it just for myself. So my bad. But anyway, I believe this was in the first podcast episode. I was talking about the pipeline from like dysfunctional / abusive family to being a good girl or a people pleaser to abusive relationships in adulthood, because like a dysfunctional family, again, abuses you or conditions you out of having boundaries, having a voice, standing up for yourself, and you're often gaslit as a young person growing up out of your feelings, you know, being told like you're crazy or you're being a baby or you're being dramatic or, you know, I never said that. Like, if the adults around you did not take accountability for their behaviors and the way that they treated you and the way that you saw them treating other people, you have no choice but to believe that you're crazy out of just trying to stay safe and trying to keep your connection to this adult that's supposed to be safe for you, right? And so that experience as a child, especially long term, really sets you up for that exact experience in adulthood. So like when my whole like relationship and social group and like just life in general was melting down and just completely like turning to quicksand in front of me, I like truly couldn't comprehend it. I truly couldn't, because I thought that I was the cycle breaker in my family and that I saw how they were living and their behaviors and was really trying to take accountability for myself. And I thought I was living kind of opposite of the way they were living. But then when all of this came out starting in 2020, I was like, how the fuck did I get here? Like, I thought I did everything right. I left my hometown. I moved to a whole new state. I met a bunch of different people. I had an open mind and met like where I was living was extremely diverse and like diverse. And, you know, I met a ton of different types of people, different cliques and whatever. Like, I just thought that I was doing everything to like have an opposite life. But because I was gaslit my whole life and didn't have boundaries and things like that, like that's the exact type of people I attracted in my young adult life. And I thought that relationship was like my safe place in a scary world because he had such a golden boy reputation and because like he presented himself as everything that I valued as well, right? So I literally spent years, like a good decade, like believing that I was so lucky and that this was like a safe place in like a very scary, dangerous world. And like I had a lot of trust issues with men. Because I also knew about a lot of like sexual trauma very young. So like sex was like, and sexuality was very scary to me and just like another way that people could abuse you, you know? So like, I just thought I was very safe and very lucky. And then when 2020 came around and all of this truth came out and I realized how unsafe I was, and not only how unsafe I was, but that every bad thing that happened to me in my adult life was connected to that person. It was devastating because again, I really thought that I was doing everything to set up a very healthy life. And so like, I'm sharing all of this because I want you to realize that I have this clarity now, but like I didn't back then. And I thought that I was making very healthy, empowered choices, and compared to the people I grew up with, I was, but that was a very low bar, you know? So like I got myself out of that dysfunction. And because I wasn't living in that dysfunction anymore, I thought like, I am so good. I am so safe. But I was really only just like here, right? And like real health and safety is like up here, right? But like, because I had such a low bar to compare it to, I was like, I am so good. Like, this is so great. And I was like so happy and proud of my life for so long, which made the truth and the deception extra devastating. And especially like then you lose trust in yourself and like in the world around you. And, you know, it's just like very confusing. Being a good girl, damn. Sorry, sometimes I just get sad about it because I'm just like, I look back on my life and I'm just like, damn, none of that really had to happen. And I try not to get lost in that because we can all go down that rabbit hole for like days, weeks, months, years. And it just drives you crazy. But like, it does make me sad that like, damn, if people like growing up just knew how to apologize every now and then, like I wonder who I could have been. And like, if I had like any example of being allowed to like say no or speak up without being severely punished, you know, like I just wonder like who I could have been. But that doesn't help anybody, you know, you can't turn back time, and what ifs aren't really helpful. But I'm sharing all of this to show you that like it's a process. It's a process and nobody ever fully like lets it go. And I'm sure like that's probably not true. I'm sure there are some people who never think about these things ever again. But like that's not me. And like I don't know if I'll ever really be able to get it out of my head, all of the things and like what ifs of like what if that person didn't do that to me, and like what if I was loved and nurtured the way I should have been loved and nurtured. You know, it's just, I don't know, I'm not going to be ashamed of that because I went through some really crazy things, and I think it's very normal to like be driven a little crazy by it, of like I would never even think to do something like that to somebody, and things like that happen to me over and over and over again. Anyway, self-reflection is so important, and being a good girl means that you have to fight like 10 times harder to understand yourself and like what you need and like to discern, because you've been gaslit out of your discernment. You've been gaslit out of your own judgment. You've been gaslit out of your own feelings. And so it's like, you have to learn how to be a human. And unfortunately, most of that happens in adulthood, and it usually happens after some big fucking crisis. So if you can, do your best to self-reflect before a crisis happens. Like, just ask yourself, like, what am I feeling? What am I needing? What are my boundaries? Like, how do I feel when I'm around that person? Or like, oh, I'm noticing that every time I'm in this place, I feel this way. You know, like, just really try and start getting to know yourself. Because the worst part of all of that betrayal, was that I was right the whole time, and that my gut was right the whole time, and that I was just told how crazy I was my whole life. And so every time I had like a gut feeling, I would be like, there I go again, being mean, being judgy, So you are self-sovereign. You have power. You've just been conditioned out of it. But like nobody can truly take your power. So when I say you've been conditioned out of it, like it's still there, but you've been conditioned to like willingly be like, here, you make the decision. You dictate how my day is going to go based on your mood. Like you tell me what I'm worth, So you are always actively giving it away. Some people are like taking it and twisting your reality to get you to do that in a much easier way, but it's kind of on us every time. Like we as good girls are conditioned to look outward, right? Like we have to be hyper vigilant. We have to monitor everybody's moods and try to like mitigate any emotional upset and try to like be the mediator for people who aren't talking. We are always kind of looking outward to see like what problems am I going to have to head off? What crises am I going to have to like be the emergency manager of? So like you are always searching outward. And so your task is going to be to start intentionally turning inward and getting to know yourself. And instead of being like, oh, that person's in distress, what can I do to help? Really be like, how am I feeling about this situation? Am I in a place where I can help? Do I have any resources to give? You have to start intentionally taking up space for yourself and being like, what do I need? What do I desire? Is this the life I want to live? Is this the person I like being around? Because life is going to like force you into it one way or another. And so when you have like a big crisis or like, a big tower moment or something, you have the option of like really utilizing that and taking that opportunity of like things falling apart to be like, okay, but how do I want to rebuild? Like, because maybe I could do things a little different this time. And you have the opportunity to take that and alchemize those lessons and choose something different. Choose something that like works better for you. But you also have the option of just trying to like glue things back the way they were and not change at all and not learn any lessons and just preserve what you used to have. Although because it fell apart and you had to like glue and tape it together, you didn't like, it's not the same, right? But like it's comfortable enough. So a lot of people choose to just kind of tape things back together and ignore the cracks and like they're just relieved that the discomfort is over and that their safety, or not even safety, their comfort is back. Some people do that. Like with COVID, like I think a lot of us saw COVID despite like the absolute horrors, right? Like it was absolutely tragic what happened, and the amount of people who died unnecessarily, absolutely tragic. But if that was going to happen, like a lot of us were like, okay, like clearly things cannot continue as they are. Like a lot of people woke up to the fact that they don't like corporate America, or they didn't like, by being forced to be home a whole lot together, they realized this person actually doesn't really even like me all that much. Like it gave a lot of people some space to like kind of reassess and be like, is this what I want? Is this even working for me? And so half of us, and again, made up statistic, don't fucking come for me about the 50% shit. Half of us were like, okay, like this is not working and therefore I need to do something different, and really utilized that like lack of normalcy to put something new together. And half of us fought for things to go back to exactly the way they were, but also a little worse. So, the choice is always yours. And I want you to be very aware of that. Like, good girls have a big propensity to, again, give away that power. If you don't have discernment and you're out here in a very disempowered way, being like, please save me, like, please take my money, please help me, I've been through so many bad things, like that opens you up to people who don't have integrity. I want you to know that like you are the only person who really knows what's good for you. And like, again, help is very important. Community is important. Professional support is very important. Like learning from people is very important. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to say, okay, yes, I liked this little golden nugget from this healer or this coach, but I really didn't like how they taught this. And like you have to be able to say, I'm going to pick and choose the little bits of information that resonated with me, and I'm gonna leave everything else, and I'm gonna see how I can tweak these tools that I'm learning into my own life. Like, don't take somebody's words and try and like copy and paste it onto your reality, because it's just not gonna work. So discernment is very key. And I know this really frustrated me when I was constantly told this, but like, you are the only person who lives the consequences of your own choices, right? So like, you can give your power to somebody else, to a healer, to a coach, to a friend, to a partner. You have every right to give your power to them if you want, but you're the one who's going to live the consequences. So even if you get mad at them for like taking their advice, like, you're the one who actually put it into action. You're the only one who actually has to live it, you know? So they're not going to give a fuck if, you know, it affected your life in a bad way, because they're not the ones living it, you know? So like, have some faith in yourself and understand that literally everybody is a human, and therefore that means they are flawed. That means they have wounds that are yet to be uncovered, no matter how popular they are, how old they are, how, you know, healed they are. Like, everybody has deeper wounds, some that they are aware of, a lot that we are not. It's a process. Nobody knows what's best for you but you. Like, I just wish I had known that I had to be my own advocate. Like, because I was everybody else's advocate, I just assumed they were doing it back for me. And I didn't realize that like nobody was. And so, I got mad at them. I got mad at people for not being a warrior for me. And I got mad at people for not being a protector for me like I was for them. But I didn't realize that like, that was very transactional. And I also didn't realize that like, I'm supposed to be my own advocate. Because when you're parentified and when you're brought up to be, you know, the protector of everybody and like be the shoulder for everybody to cry on, and, you know, the emotional dumping ground and the person who mediates and makes everybody feel better, gosh, you don't realize that like, that's not your responsibility. So you're taught growing up that it is your responsibility to take care of other people's emotions, and therefore you assume that that means they're responsible for yours. And so when you meet healthier people, they're going to go running for the hills when you start acting this way, because they're going to be like, what the fuck? Like, I'm not responsible for your feelings and you're not responsible for mine. But the dysfunctional people, the people who want you to be an emotional dumping ground, are going to be like, yeah, fuck yeah, you are supposed to be my protector. And no, I don't owe you shit, you know? So I spent so much of my life being like this hardcore vigilante protector person, and just believed that when it was my turn that people would have my back, and that was not the case at all, like at all. So you need to know what you're feeling, you need to know what you're desiring, you need to know like where your boundaries are, and you need to advocate for yourself. And I'm pretty sure I've been talking for a very long time, so I'm probably going to cut it off here. And we can get into what that actually looks like next time, because I feel like I've probably talked a whole lot, probably threw a lot at you, and integration time is very necessary. I'm a very quick mover and a quick processor, and so sometimes I fall into the trap of like, okay, I heard it, my brain knows it, and therefore now I'm good, I'm going to keep learning. But that's not like the full story. You have to hear it, you have to know it, and then you have to be able to embody it in real life. And that takes some integration. So I used to just like learn and learn and learn and learn and not really integrate anything. And obviously you just kind of like then get stuck in circles. So take all this information, sit with it for a little bit, see what it brings up for you. Let me know if you have any questions, any comments. Like, I would love for this to be more of a back and forth. I love teaching and I love like hearing questions. And then next time we'll get more into like how to actually do these things. Unless I think of another topic first that I want to talk about more. Who knows? Who fucking knows? All right, guys, until next time, I'm Molly. Have a good one.